Hello everybody, welcome to Lightcast webinars. We're really happy to have you with us today. Really important and very exciting topic of conversation, all around obviously the Ofsted skills measure. We have with us Carla Hoff, who is the Director of Business Development for FE and Communities and Government at Lightcast, which is a bit of a mouthful. And also we're happy to have with us Kurt Heinz, who is the Executive Principal at Capital City College Group. If you have any questions during the course of this webinar, please put them in your control panel under questions, and we will endeavour to get back to those during the course or later on in the webinar. We will be sending out a follow-up email, so keep your eye open for that, and that will have your recording and your slides. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you. Hi, Carla.
Hello, Debbie. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So, yeah, really excited to have Kurt with us on the call this morning, especially as it's half term for many. So, yeah, I think we struck lucky in being able to grab you for the webinar today. So, yeah, we're going to talk about Ofsted skills measure and how Kurt, along with a lot of our other clients, are starting to use that labour market data to support that, amongst a number of other things. So just to kick off, though, as always, a bit of an overview of who we are and what we do. Some of you might be joining us for the first time, but I don't think so. I think we pretty much have well-seasoned Lightcast webinars with us on these ones now. But bit of an overview. It's our mission at Lightcast to take away the guesswork out of the labour market and really shine a light on what's happening within your region, so that you, your colleagues and the people that you serve can make those more informed, data-driven decisions, whether that be related to curriculum planning, course design, employer engagement, or informing that careers advice and guidance strategy. We have data to help. So how do we do that? So when we talk about labour market data at Lightcast, we're referring to two main types of data, so structural LMI and big data. So the structural data is made up of a whole host of official government data sources, and they form the building blocks of our solutions and really help us unpick the labour market in terms of those industries and occupations and how they might change over time. The job postings on the other side, or the big data, really sense checks those projections. So it gives us a much more detailed, real-time insight on employer demand. So we really then can unpick what employers are actually seeking through recruitment and hiring activity in terms of skills and job titles. So this hybrid of data is really, really critical in helping us unpick what's going on in our local labour markets. And it really sets us apart from any other data provider out there. So we package these or this data in a range of intuitive, user-friendly software and also custom consulting solutions that allow us to share that data that can help you make those more informed decisions relating to the world of work. So on to today's topic then, really about sharing some of that early feedback from the first round of those enhanced inspections that includes the new skills measure. So we're just going to have a look at how Lightcast data in particular can support providers with that measure, and then hear firsthand from Kurt about their recent experience within the Ofsted inspection. But before that, I thought it might be useful just to give a little bit of a recap or an overview on the story so far and what it is that we're actually looking at. So a bit of a potted history, I suppose. So introduction of the Skills for Jobs Bill from the DfE set out the need for providers to evidence that they are delivering courses that the economy needs. This was part of that funding and accountability reforms back in July 21. And then shortly after that, we saw Ofsted announce that 5-year strategy. And this really set out that inspections would have a greater focus on how well providers were supporting individuals into good jobs that met the needs of the labour market. And this really kind of followed the national rollout of LSIPs, the local skills improvement plans, and that kind of that round of piloting that we saw before that. So this was nothing particularly new. We already had that curriculum intent focus in the EIF, so wasn't anything kind of groundbreaking, but I think what it did was lay out the need for the college to kind of have really hard, fast evidence of this, particularly in stating that for the college to achieve at least a good judgment for the quality of education judgment or kind of portion of the inspection, that there had to be evidence that providers were offering a curriculum that was appropriately relevant to those local and regional employment and training priorities. So some key points I think to remember or kind of have in the back of our mind. These came into use in September 22, so kind of seeing the first kind of couple of terms of inspections happening. It's only relevant to FE colleges in that enhanced inspection. So at the minute, ITPs are kind of exempt from this skills measure. We've also seen the introduction of a second inspection nominee, and specifically a skills nominee. And there's 3 judgments for this skills measure, so limited, reasonable or strong. I thought it was also worth noting that the skills boots camp provision is excluded at this time, but I have kind of heard from various kind of sources and providers that, yeah, it's set to be included within that eventually. So now really excited to introduce Kurt. So Kurt is the Executive Principal at Capital City College Group. Really nice to have you with us today, Kurt. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, just wanted to kind of pick your brains really and have a bit of a chat about your most recent Ofsted inspection. Congratulations, first of all, on the outcome. Really good outcome, and I think the first line of the or the first paragraph of the inspection report highlighted just that quote there, that the college makes a strong contribution to meeting skills needs and that leaders and managers make extremely good use of labour market information. So to kick us off, can you just give us a bit of an overview of the inspection process, so how this was kind of different to previous inspections? How did you plan in the week leading up to it? Yeah, and just a bit of an overview of what you were expecting versus the actual process.
Sure thing. Look, welcome everybody and good morning to you all, and thank you, Carl, for having me this morning to speak a little bit about our experience. And of course, our experience was just in December, where we had our full inspection of our Capital City College Group, and that was, you know, so a big college, 35,000 odd students of sort of all types, and across about 10 sites in London. So a big feat really for inspectors to carry out, and you know, the sort of things that if I focus very specifically on the skills measures and what's different, how did it differ from a typical inspection? Well, it was just a typical inspection, but it had a big extra chunk, and of course that's the new enhanced EIF and inspection framework. And I know many people will know this process really, but we had some 19 inspectors that came for us for our size and scope, and 4 of those were skills dedication inspectors with also a lead inspector. So that was a fair chunk. We expected maybe 2, maybe 3, but to get 4 was certainly just showed the emphasis and the weighting that was put on there over the 5 days. Now, of course, you get the full 1 week's notice, so that's different, and that was great. And that 1 week's notice is to give you the planning time to do and get all of the planning meetings in place for civic employers, education providers and community across that bank. We had something like about 45 meetings set up, and we'd, you know, I suppose one of the most critical elements is planning. Pre-planning for this inspection is the most critical point. I think that's what's different. You need to plan so much more for this one, and we were well planned We'd done and been to a lot of the Ofsted briefings, and we had spoken to people who've gone through the pilot inspections and been watching the space, but certainly pre-planning critical. So we knew exactly who we were going to be inviting for the meetings. We had already planned and spoken to them about those meetings, and they knew they were on our list for when it came up. And so really it was a process of a team of people getting that in place and getting those meeting dates and times. And only in the first couple of days, all of those meetings needed to happen in the first 2 days. They weren't spread over the week. So they do intensify that period, and hence, I guess, the 4 inspectors to do that, the weight of that activity in just 2 days. Then heading into the deep dives, I suppose, is one of the other points, which is really critical, and something that we didn't expect and we didn't know was coming, was that in every deep dive, they would ask the inspector who was doing that deep dive throughout that week, would ask in the very first meeting with the curriculum manager for 2 employer names. And what they wanted was the 2 employers that they would then contact to speak very specifically about the course that they were deep diving. Not the curriculum area, not the generalization, but the very specific course. That was unexpected for us. We were well planned for that. We hadn't planned for that one, that eventuality. We had, of course, employers and many employers and other organisations linked to curriculum, but they were linked more widely and holistically, you would guess, and which is how you tend to operate more. But certainly it was a little surprise to us, and we had to do some work to make sure that that particular course was linked to that employer in some way. So that was certainly a learning for us in that first planning period. I think the other point to note on planning, the absolutely critical document in pre-planning is the position statement on skills and your contribution to skills. Ours was almost as big as a self-assessment report. It was 14 pages long, but that was what was necessary to give it the depth for a college group our size. I have seen other smaller colleges, some £30 million colleges, probably a typical sort of 1 or 2 site college, at maybe 3 or 4 pages, but ours certainly went out to 14 and had examples in every case of how we worked with employers or stakeholders in all the different categories. And that was like gold, actually, because the very first day, the very first meeting was after I'd done the presentation to the inspectors and the team. The first meeting I went into some 20 minutes later was with the skills inspectors and the inspection team to talk through the skills element. And in that meeting, the lead for skills, the inspector said to me, you know what, your position statement covers 75% of everything I'm going to talk about in this meeting, so that's great. And to be very honest with you, throughout that whole meeting, I didn't venture outside of that position statement. Everything I needed for that first meeting, I covered within it, and in fact was actually in the position statement. So 100% of that was in there. The only thing I think I probably did was push the inspector towards some priority areas or some priorities within that, because it was so comprehensive. So that would be probably the only thing I really did was a little bit of direction finding within the document. Now, you know, we are well planned as an organisation. You can see here our curriculum strategy is just the first page of it up on our website. We're probably one of the few colleges that has a published curriculum strategy online as well as a strategic plan. It is fully comprehensive and it covers exactly what we're going to do, exactly our priorities, and under 12 strategic drivers. So that drives all of our planning and documentation. So again, that was a key document, and in there it talks about how we deal with priorities for London.
Great. And I think going back to the point about the lead time and the importance of having those employers kind of ready and prepped. I know that other colleges that we've spoken to have really stressed the importance of having to be on the front foot of this. So yep, there's a longer kind of lead time to get the practical elements like the meeting sorted. But do you kind of echo that in just having those conversations with employers all the time, that, you know, the importance of why you're doing what you're doing, how you're kind of aligning your offer with their skills needs? Is that something that you kind of have really had to make sure that you've been doing, not just during inspection, not just the week before, but kind of as a day-to-day thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're an organisation who truly lives and breathes engagement with employers and engagement with wider communities and stakeholders, then actually it's something you do anyway. But yes, a good 6 months out, we were already prepping for those sort of questions, making sure our curriculum managers and the people who dealt with those employers on the ground and those stakeholders were having those sorts of discussions and feeding into the curriculum and how they were working with the curriculum. And to be honest, I was a little bit worried that when they went in and spoke to employers, especially in some of the deep dives, that the language they may use may not be in the sort of keeping with what an employer might expect to be talking about. And when if you ask on a level 1 sports course, for instance, how do you contribute to the curriculum design as an employer, and perhaps that employer works with them in work experience, then perhaps they can't really answer that question very easily. So I was quite worried and nervous about that. But I think nervousness was unnecessary. And in fact, I think the inspectors were very skilled by this stage already, having done plenty of these inspections, to guide the conversation and understand and recognise how they talk to the employers and stakeholders to get the most out of them. So I thought that was, I was quite worried about some of those deep dives, and perhaps the language would be wrong and we wouldn't get justification, I suppose, for the activity that's going on. But in fact, I think it was fine. But yes, preparation for employers and preparation for all those stakeholders, the conversations that are going on, yeah, really important.
And on that point, I know we talked yesterday kind of at length about the importance of the job postings data. And I suppose the point of that in the tool is to really bridge the gap between kind of your labour market data talk, so your SIC and your SOC codes, your subject sector areas and your course areas, and then what the employers are asking for. So yeah. Do you think having that job postings data at your fingertips, it really helps that process, in that, you know, you're talking to the employers in language that they understand, you know, the skills that they want and the job like the job titles that they want, rather than it kind of being traditional structural labour market data, subject sector areas, and then kind of employer job postings?
Yeah. I mean, I think the information is gold. You know, just to say up front as well, I've got no affiliation, financial or otherwise, and links to Lighthouse. But you know, one of the things that inspectors said was that you use a full range of information, not just one source, to plan and design your curriculum. So job postings information is one thing that I use from Lighthouse, which is really very special. And you know, you can have as many employer network groups or sector boards as you like, handfuls of employers in specific sectors and around the table, which is good, and we get a lot from them, but actually they don't have the width of knowledge of this actual sector they're in, and the job postings and the frequency, and therefore the skills gaps that exist. The data you get through data mining and the tools that we have available to us, like Lightcast right now, are really fantastic for doing that. We can know exactly how many postings are being made, the frequency of those postings, which is really critical, because the higher the frequency, it tells you that there's a shortage and they are struggling to be able to fill those posts. And of course, if you look at the data at the moment in London, it's almost every sector is the same, but you can see some really high ones, 7 postings before jobs are filled, and effectively they're not filling them. So there are some sectors that you can really target for big skills gaps and know where those skills gaps are. And of course, all of our local mayoral authorities or our other national priorities, they're all set. And, you know, yes, we absolutely make sure we incorporate all of those things. And you'll see that in our curriculum strategy, how we incorporate those national and regional skills priorities. But some of our priorities are clearly not within that priority set, because they are identified through these other sources as being areas of which we need to focus on specifically in our curriculum design and plan and implementation. Because it's not just put something out there and it will fill. Sometimes you need to find that market, knowing that it's there, by knowing you've got the data that shows you that there's a need, design the curriculum, and then you've got to focus on making sure that is out to the sector and the people who may want to go into those programs in order to get the jobs. So it's also therefore a focus on your marketing activity as well and what you might do.
Yeah, and again, just having a couple of conversations with colleges who've been through this process recently. Just on that point, is that something that was kind of highlighted in the or looked at in the inspection? So yeah, we've set out our curriculum strategy. We're using lots of different data sources to kind of make sure that the course design meets the needs of the local employers, but then how are we giving that to learners? How are we giving that data to learners to make sure that A, we kind of fill in the courses that we know that there's a need for, but then B, making sure that learners are engaged and kind of have good careers prospects. So was that a theme that ran through, kind of, was it looked at separately? Was it or did it run through the entire inspection in terms of that skills measure?
You know what, it ran through everything. And that's the golden thread really now in these inspections, that it does genuinely run through everything. And they say the bar is high now for reaching a strong contribution and that judgment. You know, I think if you're doing things really well, you skip across the bar actually. And if you genuinely are embedded throughout, because it is that golden thread that hopefully we all do, and we focus on very specifically certainly in vocational colleges and focus in those areas. But the very first conversation with the curriculum manager when the inspector first went to a curriculum area was telling me about your curriculum intent. That was the very first conversation. Why are you doing it? And why are you doing it now? The sequencing of that curriculum, what's involved in that curriculum, and how it's being linked to the job market. And of course, you know, what are the extra skills perhaps on top of that main qualification, which is a set of skills which are designed by an awarding body and a qualification set. What else are you doing that adds to and ensures employability? What are all the other things that perhaps you've gained through the information you've gained from employers or by the local job market of how you're influencing that curriculum design? So yes, very first conversation, golden thread all the way.
And in those deep dives, we've had this curriculum intent focus for a while. In those deep dives into subject sector areas with curriculum heads, how does that actually work? Do they have to pull out kind of a presentation to show them? What kind of things are the inspectors asking within that deep dive into subject sector areas, alongside the kind of the employer links and the two employers that they can set up meetings with? Does it kind of go beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as if you're expecting to bring up the website and show the information that you've delved into on Lightcast, for instance. But of course, we have got a written document, and as many colleges will, for the curriculum intent for their area. I'm sure as many do, as part of the business planning process, there's a written curriculum intent document. And it brings together and evidences all of that information. So it'll say what their employment demand is, what their job market is looking for, what the actual skills, and that's been gained through these sources, whether it's employer or whether it's Lightcast information. All of that should be embedded into that curriculum intent document. So your evidence is there. Whether you're able to then, if somebody asked for a very specific link to some information that you had, you could provide it quite easily. However, that's the key thing, is that the document is there and it covers the coverage. And like I say, curriculum intent documents that first place that you'd be starting from.
So it's kind of there and done, and it's something to refer to amongst all those other data sources. But kind of, yeah, colleges are doing that anyway, and it's an ongoing process. That really useful stuff. I think we've covered a lot there and got into some detail about a lot of really extremely important parts of the inspection. Is there anything else, or what are kind of your key takeaways, I suppose, to tell people on the webinar to kind of make sure that they've kind of got nailed ahead of any inspection?
Planning. Those are the three, and just the one thing, you know, position statement, having a really strong one with all the examples in it of how you're meeting the skills needs in all the different sectors and the different relationships you have. You know, it needs to be a comprehensive document, and don't be scared to make it relatively large. It is, like I say, one of the most critical documents that will be used for that inspection. I'm glad we did the work we did on it prior to, because it took a lot of work. For instance, we met every single head of school in the organisation with their curriculum managers for a period of an hour each, a good few months out, so we could gather all of the information in the different categories and then decide what we were going to put into our position statement. So this is the level of activity we did. We didn't just sort of bring information from reports and other things that we already had. We definitely did a lot of deep diving in, so we had a comprehensive knowledge. And our skills nominee was in every single one of those meetings. So she could bring forward to the front of her mind examples from right across the college group at any stage, because we'd had all that planning work done. So that pre-planning, really critical. And of course, the pre-planning for getting those, the 4 different categories of meetings that you need to have planned for that week. Those are the 2 critical takeaways. The final one, so the third one for me, is recognising and making sure that every single curriculum area has got those 2 employers that they can call on for every course, and it needs to be course specific, so that if you've got that, then you've got everything you need ready for that inspection.
And I suppose as a side note, as we think about the purpose of this and the wider picture, having that extensive document that really sets out your mission and kind of your curriculum intent, this then only supports that whole LSIP agenda, doesn't it? You've got your there ready to provide that to the kind of delivery groups as well within that. So.
And to be honest, if you're doing all these things, it all helps you with your accountability statement anyway that's due in May. So, you know, it's all helpful for preparing for what are sort of higher expectations in the future anyway.
Great. I think we'll just pause there then to see if we have any questions from the audience, Debbie, before kind of jump into a few of the specific things in which we can provide to support with this. Debbie, do we have any questions from?
No, we don't. We actually just have somebody thanking us for organising the webinar, so that's really nice. But you're obviously doing a good job, so no, there's no questions at the moment. So thanks, guys.
Fine, lovely. Thank you so much, Kurt. This is recorded, so it will go out to everybody on the call who's attended today. So I thought then, with all that in mind, it might just be really useful to quickly go over kind of what we might be able to provide given the kind of usefulness of the data. So as we think about that, kind of we work backwards from the inspection, and this needs to be done, and it needs to be an ongoing process. So just some of the data that we can provide is around that kind of local economy overview. So having a really detailed, high level kind of insight into the region that you serve, whether that be your LET region, your LSIP kind of region, the combined authority, but what's the recruitment demand, what's the employment rates, what industries are driving the region within the kind of last 12 months, in the next 3 to 5 years, and then drilling down into the detail. So how does that kind of translate into occupations and job titles and skills? So it's great to understand what industries are driving the economy, but how do we unpick that and look at the skill set within those industries and occupations? So we've got a couple of solutions that help us, our customers, do that really well. I think the next stage from that is looking at how your current provision aligns to that. So taking kind of achievements data and mapping subject sector areas to job titles and occupation codes. It's a difficult thing to do. We talked about this earlier, but we've got employers who talk in job titles and roles and skills, and then we've got our own defined subject sector areas and courses, and then we've got the labour market data. So being able to kind of pull all of that together and say, okay, these are the areas that we're really well aligned in, and these are the areas that we're strong in, and this is how we're meeting local labour market needs in those emerging economies, is a really good exercise to do. But then also look at where there's kind of oversupply or potential opportunity. So a couple of solutions that also help us do that in terms of supply and demand and gap analysis, and just having that oversight of what the actual regional skills needs are on a month-by-month basis from that big job postings data. I think the next stage then is that deep dive, so delving into those subject sector areas and looking at how a subject sector area does translate into the labour market, and how it translates into a labour market in one area is going to be very different to how it translates in another. So pulling apart those subject sector areas and then looking at those in terms of recruitment demand, again, job titles, occupations, companies. So what companies are actually driving this demand within the area? How do we build strong relationships with those companies, and what are they asking for in terms of skills? It all fits really nicely into kind of employer engagement strategy, and then that course design and course alignment. And then finally, what we talked about towards the end there, and that student engagement piece, and really kind of that common thread that went throughout. The main purpose of this is to get people into good jobs that the local employers are asking for. So being able to take that data and give it to learners in a user-friendly way. So maybe stripping back the kind of SOC codes and the industry codes, and really just giving them salary information, employment projections, and how that relates to the courses that you offer as a provider. So a couple of really good examples on the page there. We've got Bradford College, who do this in their schools outreach through the Career Coach platform, and then also throughout embedding that labour market data into all of their marketing material from a kind of recruitment point of view. I think you're doing really, really good things in aligning provision with local employer skills needs, so why not shout about it and promote your kind of college or provider as a place to come as a learner to get that one step closer to kind of career aspirations. So I hope that's been useful. I think we've come to the half hour. So if there's no more questions, just a reminder of our next webinar. So understanding the emerging green economy. So a really good webinar coming up on the 2nd of March with colleague Will Cookson and a couple of partners that we've worked with recently. So the Data City and WPI Economics. So looking forward to that one. It'll be a really interesting one. You can sign up on the using the link on the slide. And then finally, just my contact details. I'll check with Kurt. I'm sure he's happy to kind of chat in more detail with anybody who wants to, but do get in touch if you want to chat through in more detail anything that we've talked about today and how we might be able to support. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.